All right, back again with another video here today. Today we're going to be doing the tarpon toad. We're going to be doing the more classic tarpon toad. It's going to look a little bit more like this one right here that's got the marabou tail. We're going to do the one today in a more of a black death color, the red and black color scheme. So we have our Gamakatsu SL12S 1.0 here in the vise. We've got some red 140 denier thread. What we're going to start off with is just putting some thread here on the back of the hook shank, working right back to the bend of the hook. Nice and simple. For just about anything that I do with marabou, I like to use this extra select marabou, especially if I'm making tails on a fly. It's hard to beat how good extra select is. We'll find a couple plumes here, take those off, and we'll just kind of even up our two plumes. And all we'll do is push all the marabou out to one side here. So we'll measure it out. We want roughly, it's about 2 hook lengths. And that's going to be our tail. We don't really want some giant tail hanging off the back here. About 2 hook lengths. So we're going to kind of push those feathers down on the hook a little bit so it encapsulates the hook. And then we're going to tie that right in. A couple nice tight wraps here. You can go tying as much as this as you want, but I mean, maybe 1/4 of an inch, half an inch, that's going to be enough to hold those feathers in place. So cut out our excess there. The next thing we're going to do is we want this tail to get propped up like this. So if it stays like this, it's got the ability to foul on us. And when you're staring down a group of tarpon, you definitely don't want this fly fouling, even on those really picky days. I mean, they can just absolutely ruin your day. So what we're going to do is we're going to lift up all these feathers, and we're going to take our thread, get it down and around those feathers, and bring it back over. And we're just going to repeat that. What this is going to do, as you can see, is it's going to start to make a stem. Kind of like tying in a parachute post for some of you freshwater guys. All we're doing basically is just making a parachute post off the back with this marabou. So, do this several times. Try to get it nice and stiff. So that we know that that's not going anywhere. So that way, if this tries to foul on us, it's just going to have a much harder time doing it, especially when we get some materials blocking it here. So next thing we're going to do is add a collar. We're going to start out with some cross-cut rabbit zonker. So looks like we already got a nice little piece here cut for us. And what we want to do is just get our rabbit zonker on here. Since we're tying this the classic way, we're going to leave it on the hide. If you want less bulk in your fly, you can cut it off the hide, put it in a dubbing loop and tie it in. I find that a lot of guys like that because that hide will hold water. So if you use no hide and you just use the dubbing loop, that fly is going to hold less water. It's not going to sink as much. It's going to throw easier. All those kinds of good things. But it doesn't always look as good as when you palmer in the hide with it. So we're going to palmer in this hide probably 2 or 3 times. So we got 1 on there. We got 2. And we'll just throw 1 more in there for good measure. 3. We'll kind of separate some of these fibers here. Move our thread back so we can capture that. And you can see as we capture this, you got a pretty good looking collar going there. kind of work our thread forward a little bit and just make sure that you want that rabbit tied in nice and tight. We didn't use any super glue or anything to help bind that hide down. So we just want to make sure that's tied in nice and tight and it's not going to slip or go anywhere on us. So we'll even do a couple wraps right over the top of this hide. There we go. So already starting to look like a nice little tarpon bug here. You can see you can't even see that parachute post anymore. I mean, really, if you wanted to just fish something like that for tarpon, you could slap a couple eyes on here and call it a tarpon fly at that point. But we're going to go ahead and do the rest of the pattern. So the next thing we're going to get is some strong saddle hackles. So these are black. So I got a nice little feather picked out here. We're going to get some of the fluffier pieces pulled off this feather. We don't need all that fluff. And this isn't a mandatory step. I just like doing this step because it hides a little bit of your tie-in with the rabbit. You're never going to get as clean of a finish with the rabbit as you will with the feather. So it just helps it look like a cleaner fly. Does provide, some nice movement, almost like some little legs on there. But like I said, not necessary if you don't have it. So we'll move our thread out of the way here. All we're gonna do is just palmer this in, stroking the feathers back after every wrap. Just get them nice and laid back. All we're really trying to do is just cover up our tie-in point right here, so that it doesn't look super messy. Fish don't really care, but when you're someone that sells flies for a living, it turns out people tend to care. So we try to make these as nice as we can for people. But if you're just fishing, you're going through going through a long tarpon season, this is absolutely a step that you could skip if you wanted to. Go ahead, we'll cut that excess out of there. And kind of fold all these fibers back, and we'll just wrap back up on them a little bit. And you can see what I mean. It looks much cleaner than the rabbit did. Next thing we're going to do, we're going to work all the way to the front of our hook here. All right. And we need some eyes. Do we got eyes? I think we got some eyes. Here we go. That'll work. We'll throw some yellow eyes on it today. Why not? So these are just mono eyes. You can get these in all kinds of colors: pinks, yellow, orange, chartreuse, black. Kind of wish I had some orange for this fly today, but I think the orange are in the mail. So we will just use yellow today. I'm sure the fish won't care too much. And if they do, I'll have to make some new flies for myself. Just get that tied in. Just make sure it's nice and straight. You don't need to tie these in too tight. If you do, you'll end up folding them back or breaking them. Just get them in so where they're tied straight. And then at the end of the fly, we're going to cover that up with some UV resin to make sure that's nice and strong. Now we'll work our thread back to our saddle feather. And we're going to go ahead and add some fish hair for the end of this fly. You can get this fish hair on our site. It's great stuff. It's $2 a pack, and the pack will last you for tons and tons of flies. Same kind of stuff as like Congo hair, EP fiber. It's all the same. You can go out and spend $8 on a pack of EP fiber, get the exact same hair. You can spend $2 on Fishhair, or I think Congo hair is also $2. So, why spend more for the exact same thing? Doesn't make too much sense. So, all right. So now, as we do with a lot of toad style bodies, we're gonna take our little clip here. Any little clip will do. Just trying to hold some of those materials back as we tie this stuff in. So we took that hunk of hair and we cut it into fourths. Nice little decent chunks. You can make them fairly thick. We will, at the end of this fly, use our cauterizing tool to kind of neaten it up a little bit and trim it down, but we're just going to do figure eight, or not figure eight wraps, X wraps. So we'll do 5 or 6 wraps going one way, and we'll bend the other side back here, and then we'll do 5 or 6 wraps going the other way, making a nice little X. Most important thing with these is just take your time, make your X nice and neat. Try not to trap any fibers. And you can see on this side, you got your little X. Oop, trapping fibers there. And then on this side, it's going to look nice and flush. So what you do, you got your X, you fold those ones all back, and you put your clip back on it. Now you got a nice workspace to work with, instead of trying to hold everything back with all your fingers, and you do that, you end up just trapping a ton of fibers. So again, 5 or 6 wraps going one way. Pull it back a little bit. I try to get these as close to each other as they can, so there's no real spaces in the body. And we'll do 5 or 6 wraps the other way. And just 2 wraps in front of it. So once you kind of get the hang of it, it's a pretty quick process. Usually only need about 4 or 5 clumps. Typically you'll do it. So it just depends, how thick you want to make your clumps. Again, that'll be something as you tie these, you'll start to see, how much you need in your clumps. Again, do our X wrap. And I mean, if you get some unruly hairs, you can kind of cut them out of there, because you're going to cut past it later. Get another section here. Let's see if I can get away with 4 sections. I might have to do a 5th. And we'll probably throw a small 5th in there. None of these are super exact. I mean, if you got to go 4, you got to go 5. Bunches of fiber, no big deal. Like I said, this stuff's cheap enough to where you're not really worried about how much you're using of it. So we'll take just a little bit more off our hank here. Just a little section. And you just cut these sections. Double it over, cut that, double it over again. Cut that. Nice little section, kind of pull one of these long ones out of there. This can be a little tricky when you leave yourself with just a little bit of room, but we'll make it work here. Kind of pull some of these fibers down, and then we'll work it just in back of the eye here. And it's gonna butt up right against her eye. Good. All right, get a couple wraps right here on the front. And at this point, if you want to, you can go ahead and whip finish the fly. And get a couple whips just right there in front of your eyes. All right. The next thing we're going to do, we're going to trim down this kind of unruly looking body here. So what you want to do is kind of just get the fly on its side. Get all of your fish hair. And just kind of get an angle. So I like to go a little bit off the eyes. Nice about 45-degree angle. And just make one straight solid cut. And you're going to do the same thing on the other side. Like I said, this will be another thing where you just kind of got to do it a few times. There might not always be exactly even on either side, but I'm going to try to get them pretty close. Those two look pretty close. And if you do screw up and you make one a little longer than the other, you can get your fun little carterizing tool here like I do. I like to just take this carterizing tool, let it get nice and hot, and then all we do is just come back and kind of hit the top section. And just slowly, you don't even have to touch the fibers. You just have to touch, you know, kind of near the fibers. And they'll kind of melt. You know, you can get it into the shape you want. If you want more of a round shape, do that. Again, not a necessary step, but if you are someone who ties flies and are trying to sell them, you do have to sell them to fishermen. You want them to look as nice and as pretty as possible. Oops. Last thing we're going to do for this fly, we're going to take a little bit of our Deer Creek Sculpt. And we're just going to protect our thread wraps here on the bottom. You know, nice little thin layer on the bottom of the fly. Get all of our thread wraps, kind of a little bit of Sculpt on them. As you can see, we'll go ahead and hit that with the UV light. That's cured in seconds. That's what I love about the this Deer Creek stuff. It cures really fast. It's non-tacky. It's great stuff. So we're also going to put a little bit, like I said earlier, right here on top of the eyes. This is going to ensure your eyes will never spin around the hook. You're never going to have to worry about, you know, going in and fixing your eyes falling off or anything on this pattern. Those eyes are not going anywhere. And that's it. That's the tarpon toad with the marabou tail. This is more of a classic way of tying the tarpon toad. You know, you can definitely go smaller on this fly. You could go down to probably size 1 or 2 if you were going for a much smaller tarpon. And you could tie it much bigger if you really wanted to. I mean, you could tie this in a 3.0 or 4.0 size. Definitely, you know, if you got some bigger tarpon in your area. I think some people even throw them for GT. So that's the tarpon toad. Thank you guys for watching, and hopefully you guys all stay tuned to my YouTube channel soon. I think we're going to be putting a contest up sometime this week or this weekend. So look out for that, and we'll keep the videos coming. Thanks, guys.